The barn had been condemned for 14 years. Inside it sat a car worth $11 million, and nobody in that scrapyard knew it yet. Mason Cole knew. He just didn't look like a man anyone should listen to. Flannel gone soft at the elbows, hands cracked from cold mornings, a daughter on his hip who wouldn't let go of a stuffed elephant with one button eye. Farm trash, the scrap buyer said, loud enough for the whole lot to hear. Everything under that tarp goes by the pound. Mason didn't argue. He just walked toward the barn doors. What was under that tarp would rewrite what people thought they knew about American cars. Don't look away from this one. Grady Voss ran the salvage auction like he owned every rusted thing on the property. Wide shoulders, a laugh that carried, two hired men who nodded at whatever he said before he finished saying it. When Mason asked to inspect the barn before the scrap crew hauled it, Voss grinned at the small crowd gathered for the estate sale. Inspect what, exactly? Rat nests? Laughter rolled through the lot. A woman near the fence line didn't laugh. She was watching Mason's face instead of Voss's mouth. Mason said nothing back. He set his daughter down gently, crouched, and tucked the stuffed elephant more securely under her arm before he stood again. Ruby held Peanut against her chest and watched her father the way she always did when the world got loud. Quiet, still, waiting to see what he'd do. Mason walked into the barn alone. Voss called after him. 5 minutes, farm boy, then it's crusher wait. The doors creaked shut behind him. Nobody laughed at that part. His late father had owned this land, back when the barn held more than rust. Not wealth, not comfort, just a car, hidden under a tarp and 40 years of dust, and a promise Mason had made as a boy never to sell it cheap. Money had been tight since the funeral, tighter since the divorce, tighter still since he'd started raising Ruby on his own. An old family friend, Earl, leaned against his truck near the fence. "You sure that thing's what you think it is, Mason?" Earl asked. Mason didn't answer right away. "I've known since I was 9, he said. Not a guess, not a memory dressed up as fact. Certainty, plain and closed like a locked door." That morning, Ruby had asked him to sew Peanut's loose button eye before it fell off completely. After this, he'd told her, "I promise." He'd zipped the elephant into her jacket pocket himself. Careful, the way he handled things worth keeping. Inside the barn, dust hung gold in the light through the broken slats. Mason pulled the tarp back by hand, slow, and there it sat. Low, sculpted, a car shape nobody built anymore. Not a farm relic, not junk, a prototype. Hand-formed aluminum body, a maker's plate half hidden under decades of grime. He wiped it clean with his sleeve. 3 letters, a number. His pulse didn't spike, his breathing didn't change. He'd expected this his whole life. Outside, Voss was already calling for the loader. 2 minutes, Mason said, walking back out, voice level, unhurried. You need to see this before anyone touches that barn. Voss rolled his eyes at the crowd, but something in Mason's stillness pulled people forward anyway, not because they trusted him, but because men who don't raise their voices are hardest to ignore. They followed him inside. The room outside the barn had gone from a joke to a held breath. Under the driver's seat, wrapped in oilcloth, Mason found what he'd come for. The original build sheet, hand-signed, dated, listing an engineer's name that didn't belong to any factory Voss's scrap papers claimed the barn contents came from. Paper, not plastic, real, brittle at the folds. He held it up where the crowd could see it. This car was never supposed to leave this barn, Mason said. It was never supposed to exist on factory books at all. Earl said the only sentence that needed saying. That's why your daddy never sold it. He was protecting it. Voss's face lost its shape. That paper doesn't mean anything, he said, but his voice had gone thin at the edges. It means your scrap manifest listed a piece of automotive history as farm debris, Mason said, and somebody at your yard knew exactly what they were buying for pennies. A woman stepped out from the crowd, the one who hadn't laughed. Her name was Diane Ashford, and she ran acquisitions for the Regional Automotive Heritage Museum. She'd come for a tractor. She wasn't leaving with a tractor. She took the build sheet from Mason's hands and read it twice, her expression sharpening with every line. Then she turned to Voss. You've been buying documented history off unsuspecting families and shredding the paperwork, she said. Not a question. A closed door, same as Mason's. I'm calling this in before that loader touches anything. Voss started to argue. Nothing useful came out. His own hired men wouldn't meet his eyes anymore. Diane didn't stay by the barn doors. She crossed the gravel lot, stepped past the loader, past the crowd still murmuring, and lowered herself down, knees in the dirt, museum blazer and all, until she was eye level with a little girl holding a one-eyed stuffed elephant. "What's his name?" she asked, nodding at Peanut. "Peanut," Ruby said. "His eyes loose. Daddy's gonna fix it today." Diane smiled. "Not the kind for cameras. Your dad fixes a lot of things, doesn't he?" Ruby nodded. Serious the way only a child can be serious about something enormous she doesn't fully understand yet. Then she said the thing that made the whole lot go quiet again. Quieter than the build sheet had. "Daddy says old things just need someone who remembers." Diane didn't answer right away. She just nodded once, slow, and rose back to her feet. She turned to Mason. "That car doesn't go anywhere near a crusher," she said. "I want to talk to you about consulting for the museum. Paid. Real work. Cataloging what's left on properties like this before yards like his get to them first." Mason looked at the barn, then at his daughter, then back at Diane. "I'll think about it," he said. Not yes, not no. Just a man who'd learned good news, arrived slower than bad news, and deserved the same caution. Behind him, the scrap crew was already reversing the loader away from the barn doors, someone shouting instructions about tarps and transport trucks. Mason knelt down, zipped Ruby's jacket back up around Peanut, and lifted her onto his hip the way he did every morning before school. He carried her toward the truck as Voss's men argued with Diane's phone call in the background. Ruby's small fingers looped through the elephant's loose button eye, bumping gently against his collarbone with every step across the gravel.